Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. Breaking news coming out of the NFL. Our very first firing in the NFL season this year. Carolina Panthers parting ways with Matt Rhule after 2+ seasons under the helm in Carolina. Panthers stumbled to start the year. They're just 1-4 so far. Dating back to last season, they've only one win over their past 11 games. Assistant defensive coach Steve Wilks has been named the head coach in the interim as Carolina truly has struggled since 2020. That is the entire tenure of Matt Rhule as head coach, an abysmal 11-27 record. Welcome back into HQ. Zach Aldridge. Weeks before David Tepper made this move.
This is not a surprise, Zach. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Matt Rhule has been in a disastrous situation for the last quarterback. And when you don't have a quarterback, you keep trying to fix it by going out and getting guys. And when you go get guys, they're usually available for a reason. So you have no chance to succeed without a quarterback. We know that. And, you know, I go back to 2019. They had a chance. They could have moved up and drafted Justin Herbert, but they didn't. They stayed where they were, and they didn't get their quarterback. So there's always a lot of hindsight involved here. But Matt Rhule never had a quarterback, never had a chance to succeed. His offensive coordinator got blamed. You know, they blamed Brady and sent him out to pasture. But the reality is, I don't care who you are as a head coach. If you don't have a quarterback in the NFL who can make plays consistently, you're not going to win. And ultimately, you're going to lead to being fired. And that's what happened today.
It's essentially ever since Cam Newton left the first time and he came back, the Panthers have been nowhere near as good. The players in the locker room, even as much as yesterday after the loss of the 49ers, they were talking about how much they stood behind Matt Rhule and how good of a leader he was, and he was one to take the blame and was one to kind of help them weather the storm. Obviously, that's not going to happen now, and we've seen how unhappy the fans were for such a long time. When you look at Steve Wilks, who is now going to be the interim head coach in his second stint in Carolina, a Charlotte native, the secondary, they spoke very highly of Wilks when he got brought on. Do you think this is a chance for him to maybe potentially become the head guy for the foreseeable future?
You know, one quick thing about Matt Rhule before we move on to Steve Wilks. You know, maybe they said that and they publicly put that out in the locker room, but there were a lot of people that I know that said that Matt Rhule would blame others and never took accountability on himself for what went wrong there. So I don't know if the players were being honest when they said that publicly. We know how guys are when the microphone's in their face and then you get them on the side, they get the real story. So Matt Rhule did himself no favors, and ultimately I think that's what cost him his job. But hey, seven years, $62 million, he's going to be a happy camper walking out the door. As for Wilks, Steve Wilks was a one and done in Arizona, and they did him wrong. And I know people that were in that organization, and Steve Wilks was a good coach. He just had a bad situation at the time. Remember, Josh Rosen was there. He was a disaster as a quarterback. And this is one of those guys that might be able to get back on track, get his career back on track with this opportunity. People I know respect Steve Wilks greatly in this league. They think he's a smart guy. They think he's a good football coach. And he just got dealt a bad hand in Arizona. And maybe this is a chance for him to reclaim his career, show people he can coach, try and get this team turned around, although it's going to be a real challenge because of the quarterback position, and maybe get a chance to be that long-term guy as the head coach there or somewhere else again.
Yeah, the Carolinas are desperate for a winner. They've been wanting that ever since Ron Rivera left in the first place, and a lot of fans are not happy with owner David Tepper and the direction that he's taken this team. Do you see any situation that the Panthers can win enough games this year to bring back the fans, to show any sense of hope of potentially, okay, maybe they don't have a top 3 draft pick and they don't take a QB there? Is there any way out of this in the near-term future instead of a long process of a rebuild?
No, there is not. Because, again, I go back to the quarterback position. You know, whether it's Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, P.J. Walker, it doesn't matter. They're not good enough at the quarterback position, and therefore it puts more pressure on, A, the running game, and Christian McCaffrey's in and out of the lineup, B, the defense, which has a bunch of good young players on it, and the defense actually has the talent to be a pretty good unit, but when you're on the field all the time and your offense isn't good enough, there's a lot of pressure put on that defense. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that could be the case. They have to find a franchise quarterback, which means if you're a Panthers fan, it might not be a bad thing to lose some games this year. There's some good quarterbacks at the top of the draft. You know, you got Will Levis. He's a good possibility out of Kentucky. You know, maybe Bryce Young, maybe Anthony Richardson if he comes out. There's some good quarterbacks in this draft, so it might not be a bad thing to lose some games.
And this could be potentially the turning point that a lot of people are looking for. Okay, you go a new direction and you have a chance to figure things out going ahead in the future. Baker Mayfield, I would say, has looked worse this year than he has in any stint of time he did with the Browns. Do you think that's a portion of Matt Rhule being the head guy and influencing Ben McAdoo, the offensive coordinator? Or what do you chalk up to his poor play that has been just so abysmal?
Well, his offensive line stinks. I mean, let's be real. I mean, they're not good up front, and they drafted a key asset to play left tackle in Nicky Ekwonu, and it hasn't been as good. So I just think that there's a lot of things at play. One, Baker's not playing well. Two, the offensive line isn't very good. They're not running the ball that well. And, you know, they're not getting the ball to playmaker. They have some guys on that team that can make some plays down the field. They're not getting them the football. So I think it's a combination of things. But ultimately, it falls at the foot of the head coach. And Matt Rhule, who, you know what happens in these coaching decisions. There's a head coach. His offense isn't working. I'm not going to take the blame. Let's get rid of the offensive coordinator. Then the offense doesn't change. Let's go get a new quarterback. The offense doesn't change. So who's to blame? The head coach. And that's why he's out the door.
If it's not Steve Wilks that has the opportunity to become the head coach in the future for the Panthers, what type of name do you think they should target to lead them? Should it be an established head coach and go the complete opposite direction of what Tepper went in the first place, trying to break the mold and get someone from college? What should they do?
Well, I mean, Sean Payton's going to be out there, and he's going to be back into the league next year as a head coach. The question becomes, would Sean Payton take that job? Here's the reason why. Unless you have a high draft pick and can get him a quarterback, he's not going to take a job without a quarterback. He's smarter than that. There's going to be some other jobs available where guys do have quarterbacks. So I don't think, Sean Payton would be one of the teams high on his list, but you never know. And remember, Tepper has a lot of money. He's one of the richest owners in the National Football League. If he wants to foot the bill to go pay Sean Payton $12 to $15 million a year, then go do it, because I think Sean Payton's the best guy available out there, and I know Sean would bring some really good coaches with him, and he would try, if he got a quarterback, and if they're a bad team this year, he'll get a quarterback, he would turn that thing around.
Is it time to straight up tank and finish the year, who knows, 2-15? What do you think?
That wouldn't be a bad thing. Until you solve that quarterback position, all you're going to be doing is piecing together season by season and hope you have an aberration season where maybe your team goes, 11-6, and you get to the postseason and you get a little run because the ball bounces your way, and then the next year you go back to who you really are, which is an average team. You have to have a quarterback. You have to solve it. So 2-15, that would be a bad thing. You go into the draft, get your quarterback, and get Sean Payton and move on from there.
Who would you pick to be that draftee coming out of this class right here in college for the Panthers to have in the future?
Will Levis, quarterback at Kentucky. First and foremost, number one, he'd be my guy. Big, prototypical, can stand in the pocket, can make all the throws. But there's some other guys. I mentioned Bryce Young. I mentioned Richardson, if he comes out from Florida. You also have C.J. Stroud. There are guys in this draft who can throw the football around, and you're going to get a quarterback you can build around, and that's what they need to do.
They just drafted Matt Corral back in the third round. He's out for the entire season with a Liz Frank injury. Do you think that he has a chance to, when healthy, be the guy who can lead the Panthers in the future?
Absolutely not. I think he's a backup quarterback in the National Football League. If he were around this year, I think he'd get an opportunity to show what he could do, but I think he's one of those guys that's going to end up being a backup quarterback. They need to get that guy, and Matt Corral is not that guy. What
does that say about how David Tepper is running things right now, from just the decision-making all across the board to be a few years into this ownership and really no true way out in the near future?
I mean, look, he bought the team. He has the money. He makes the decisions. Ultimately, he's going to be the one that's going to be blamed for everything, because you hire and fire the coaches. You paid that guy a boatload of money because you thought he was a long-term answer. He wasn't. You still have to pay him. And now you have to go out and pay another guy, so it's not going to work.
Thank you very much, Pete, for all of your insight as we take a deeper dive into the Panthers firing Matt Rhule after 2+ seasons as the head coach in Carolina. A new era will begin soon with Steve Wilks joining and becoming the interim head coach. But that is the Panthers situation right now, and a lot of things to figure out.
Yeah, we're going to talk more with Charles Davis and then also Dennis Dodd. We talked a little bit about, the college game. Could that be a fit for Matt Rhule down the line? We'll chat more with Dennis Dodd about that as well.
Hopefully some wins on the other side.
And taking a look over at the Panthers under Matt Rhule, 11-27, not the position that you want to be in there in Carolina, ranking 28th in the NFL, turnovers 57. Yeah, we'll get to Charles Davis. He'll be talking more with us after the break, getting a deeper dive on this breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. And we do have some breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, where the Carolina Panthers fired their head coach, Matt Rhule. So Steve Wilks is actually named the interim head coach for the Carolina Panthers. And right now we do want to, we'll talk more with Charles Davis in just a moment, but quickly taking a look at the Panthers under Matt Rhule, an 11-27 record there. Ranking 28th in the NFL. Turnovers, that's at 57. That is tied for 26. So again, the Panthers firing Matt Rhule as their head coach. And to talk more about this, we do want to bring in CBS Sports NFL analyst Charles Davis. And Charles, you were actually in Carolina there calling the game. You saw that loss to the 49ers. So first, we just want to get your initial reaction to this news. Not necessarily surprising, but what were your initial thoughts when you heard that the Panthers are parting ways with Rhule?
Jacqueline, I think you summed it up quite nicely when you said not exactly surprising, but at the same time, when I look at their schedule, because they're on that run of playing the last three NFC champions. Okay, I mean, yesterday it was San Francisco. They go to Los Angeles this week with a Rams team that's got to be very upset after what happened yesterday against Dallas. And then they welcome Tampa Bay into town. So in the midst of all of that, I thought if it was going to happen with Matt Rhule, and again, as you said, not surprising, I thought they might actually get through Tampa before they made the decision to move on from him, because then it's at the Falcons, Bengals, Falcons again. And if you're going to have any chance at all within your division, those are two division games that are winnable. And I thought that they might make the move then. But again, as you said, not surprising, especially after what we saw yesterday. And you put up the offensive numbers. And I think that's the reason, more than anything, that this move is being made. Because the defense was doing well, and the defense was playing well all year long. But offensively, they have not been good at all.
So Charles, you mentioned you thought maybe they would give him another game or two before actually making that decision. So we also talked about Steve Wilks. He's going to be the interim head coach there in Carolina. Week 6 against the Rams, that's up next for them. What do you think this team has to do moving forward? I mean, not to get a winning record, but just to kind of hang in there moving forward for the rest of the season.
Well, I think they're already hanging in there, and that's been part of the problem, is that they've been close enough that it heightens the frustration of the people who run the team, the people who support the team, the people watching the team, because you've seen opportunities throughout this season where this team is in a position to actually have won ball games and have found a way not to. And as I've said before, it comes back to me watching them on offense yesterday. The defense gave them opportunity after opportunity. I'm not saying they're saying they gave them 15, but at the same time, they had a blocked field goal attempt. They had a takeaway on a fumble by George Kittle. They gave the offense chances in decent field position to convert and make bigger plays. And when you have playmakers on your offensive side, such as a DJ Moore, 3 straight years over 1,000 yards, 3 straight years over 1,200 scrimmage yards, he's not touching the ball much. Robbie Anderson, a noted deep threat who's had nearly 1,000-yard season in his career, he's not touching the ball much. Christian McCaffrey, they're trying to get him doing it in the run and the pass game. He can't carry the load alone. And Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, has just not been what they've needed from him. They've not been giving him what they've needed in terms of accuracy and consistency throwing the football. Put it all together, they're not moving the ball. The final thing, Jacqueline, third down, as everyone talks about, is a huge down in the NFL. They were dead last in the league going into Sunday's game in terms of third down conversions on offense. They did nothing to change it. I think they were 3 for 12, 3 for 13 on third downs yesterday. Put that all together, you give your defense no chance, even though they've tried to give the offense a fighting chance.
Now, Charles, you were mentioning playmakers there, but you didn't say anything about Christian McCaffrey. So how much of this is a coaching issue or just because we're dealing with injuries like McCaffrey?
No, I think it's much more they're trying to figure out how to get the ball to those playmakers. We went into yesterday's game and we said it at the top. The numbers on the field are 2, 3, and 22 in terms of offense. And 22, of course, is Christian McCaffrey. Can they get it to him more in the run game? Can they use him more as a pass receiver? Can they get the Christian McCaffrey who, remember, not too long ago, ran for 1,000 yards and caught passes for 1,000 yards. He's had 2 seasons where he's caught over 100 balls as a running back. I said when he came out of college, Jacqueline, I stand by it. When he came out in his draft in 2017, I said he was the best route runner with the best hands, regardless of position, whether he's a running back or a receiver. In the time that he's played from his draft class, the only person I'd put past him would be Cooper Kupp. The rest of the receivers, even though they're good receivers, they're not a better receiver than Christian McCaffrey. So I know that Ben McAdoo, the offense coordinator, is trying to find more ways to get him the ball, but it just hasn't happened enough, not just for him, but especially for DJ Moore, who can be a game breaker. We had him against Deebo Samuel yesterday. DJ Moore is a Deebo Samuel type player. After the catch, he turns into a running back. He's not touching it very often. He's not getting the ball. And when he does, it doesn't come through in a way where you can have the football and stay on your feet and get downfield. He's having to make a lot of tough catches, even though the ball's not coming his way very often to get him into open field. And Robbie Anderson, they're not getting it to him deep at all, except for one play yesterday. That was a 30-plus yarder.
All right, that is our CBS Sports NFL analyst, Charles Davis. Charles, thanks so much for joining us here. And taking a look at what's up next for the Carolina Panthers. Week 6, they got that against the Rams. Then next up, Tom Brady and the Bucs and the Falcons. Again, Carolina Panthers parting ways with their head coach, Matt Rhule.
Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. Breaking news out of the NFL on this Monday morning. The Panthers firing Matt Rhule after 2+ seasons spent in Carolina. He compiled a record of 11-27 as the Panthers were blown out at home yesterday by the San Francisco 49ers in a very pro-San Francisco crowd. The tenure of Matt Rhule was not a very friendly one, especially if you're a fan of offense. It was anemic almost every single week, just under 20 points per game. That will not get it done when you have a defense that struggles to keep it going when the offense can't get them off the field in enough time. Matt Rhule fired in Carolina. Steve Wilks will take over on an interim basis as the head coach, the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals for a season. He's in his second stint with Carolina. So now Matt Rhule out in the free agency market, going to figure out where he's going to go next. We're now joined by our college football expert, Dennis Dodd. And Dennis, we've already had a fair share of coaches being fired in the college ranks. You've got Wisconsin, Georgia Tech, Nebraska, Arizona State, just to name a few. We knew that Matt Rhule was a program builder, and he did well in college at Baylor. He did well at Temple. Where do you think we could see Matt Rhule land, and could it be as soon as next season?
Yeah, I definitely think it'll be next season, Zach, and I think he shoots to the top of the list at Nebraska. There's much speculation about Lance Leopold at Nebraska and Wisconsin, but now you've got a proven head coach, at least at the college level, that I think would be willing to take those jobs. I'm not saying Lance Leopold is out of it, but I just want to go over what Matt Rhule accomplished in only 3 years at Baylor. He came into a program that it was in the middle of a scandal. It was still the sexual assault scandal going on there. He recruited a first class that had no 4 or 5 stars, Zach. His best in-state player was a 178-pound receiver named Gavin Holmes, who I think was the 58th player in Texas. His best national recruit was the 262-rated guard in the offensive line. Zach, 2 years later, that 1-11 team was 11-3 and taking Oklahoma to overtime for the Big 12 championship. I can't stress that enough. He's a developmental guy. He's a college coach. He knows the ropes right now. And if there's a code he can crack, it's Nebraska's, because they've tried everything. You might as well get a guy who's the son of a minister who grew up in New York, played at Temple, coached at Temple, was very successful there, played under Joe Paterno as a walk-on at Penn State. He knows the ropes. And I think this is what, frankly, this was just a dalliance. He thought he could do it in the NFL. Maybe it didn't work out. He goes back to college. Now he's got a few months to think about it. I thought the problem in the beginning for him from the beginning with all these job openings was he had to extricate himself from the Panthers first before he did anything. Well, now that's been taken care of. He can openly talk to these teams. And I think Nebraska's the favorite right now. I think Wisconsin is going to have some interest. And frankly, if Arizona State gets itself together, I think he would go to Arizona State, but I don't know how focused they are on getting a guy like Matt Rhule. But he'd be available.
I remember you mentioned Matt Rhule being the son of a preacher. His introductory press conference that he had in Carolina, it gave those vibes and spirits of a guy that seemed like he would be the one to be able to turn around just from hearing him speak. Do you think he has lost any of his luster now as a head coach? Will he have any trouble being able to get back to the college ranks and do what he was able to do so well?
No, I think he'll be successful very quickly because what I just mentioned, Zach, he was at the absolute bottom with Baylor and signed a class with no 4 or 5 stars, and 2 years later, again, playing for the Big 12 title. If he goes to Nebraska, as bad as Nebraska is, their football infrastructure right now, and I know they got money and I know they're in the Big 10, and I know they're going to go in feet first with NIL, that's a bad product on the field. And that thing has to be turned around quickly, and it's still better than what Baylor was in 2017. He was at Baylor from 2017 and 2019. There's much more in place at Wisconsin. Paul Chryst had won 72% of his games. You just saw Graham Mertz have a big day Saturday in their victory. I don't think they're terrible. I think Nebraska's borderline terrible right now. So if you can turn around Baylor, short answer, you can turn around Nebraska.
If he decides to not go that way of Nebraska, for me, it seems like the Georgia Tech could be another opportunity to really take a program and build it over again after Jeff Collins got rid of the offense that they ran for so many years and no more option and everything. Is that a chance to kind of be in that same kind of recruiting territory that he had with the kids that he was recruiting in Baylor, being back in the Southeast in that area? Could Georgia Tech be a spot in the ACC to really kind of shoot up?
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about mentioning Georgia Tech. It's a private like Baylor. She's got some experience there. My question for Georgia Tech, after getting rid of Jeff Collins and the athletic director, Todd Sansbury, what is their commitment to big-time football right now? I don't mean to insult them. I just have the question because I don't know. Are they willing to spend what it's going to take to get a Matt Rhule, who's a proven college commodity, to after making NFL money? That might be in the $6 or $7 million range because that's how highly he is thought of in the college space. But he will get them winning. And in a conference, frankly, it's not the SEC where you can get some things done. So yes, Zach, you raise a good point. I think Georgia Tech is definitely in the space, but it's going to be a horse race. This is going to be really interesting because I know Nebraska's very interested. I absolutely think that Georgia Tech's going to be interested. I don't know where Arizona State's heads are at right now. I think that'd be a good job for him as well. And if his age, I don't know who his agent is right now. I'm about to find out. He's going to have a bidding war on his hand, and this guy's going to make a lot of money pretty soon.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always interesting to monitor the other side of once a coach gets fired is, hey, where are they going to go next? And certainly will not be any shortage of suitors for Matt Rhule moving forward. Thank you again, Dennis, and we'll be in touch with you in the future as we monitor this new firing in the NFL and seeing how all the dominoes fall from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the college game has changed a lot since 2013, 2014, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get back in and fit there in the college game, just seeing how it goes. But we'll be monitoring all this breaking news here on CBS Sports. If you're just joining us here, that breaking news, Carolina Panthers firing Matt Rhule as their head coach. FFT is coming up next, more HQ at 1 o'clock. Stick with us here for all that breaking news in Carolina.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.